Bum ba dum bum bum. Bum dum dum. Funky fantasy. Dum 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 dum. Otacon. Dum dum dum. Stratosaurus. Dum dum dum. Bum bum ba dum bum. It's the War of Nerds. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of the War of Nerds podcast. And if you notice, I didn't say special guest edition because it's not. As a long story short, we have a new host. And don't worry, Alfred is still a host too, but we are just kind of widening the spectrum of having a couple people to fill in so that all of us can kind of live uh, more in our day-to-day lives. So this is Mr. C.S. Myers. Caleb, go ahead and introduce yourself, brother.
Hi. Wow, that's a lot more energy than I intended to come off with. Yeah, like you said, my name is Caleb. My book is not out yet. I'm still working on it. I'm about halfway through the first draft. I have a nasty habit of going back and editing as I go, so it's taking a lot longer than it really should. I need to just finish it. But yeah, it's a science fantasy kind of Treasure Planet-esque space pirate adventure. It's a lot of fun. Nathan and I have been talking about it back and forth, and there's also a little bit of a secret, well, not so secret, project going on that we might talk about later if we have time. But yeah, no, it's good to be here. I've watched the show and it's good to long time watcher, first time caller. It's fun
Oh,
to fun to finally be in the mix.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. You heard it live. Someone who liked the show enough, they just couldn't help when they were called.
I kept
They,
pestering.
yeah, 100%. Anyways, y'all, thank you for coming back and joining us again for another funky topic. And today should be a fun one for any of our listeners who like Star Wars. We're going to talk about, and especially for those of you who hate the prequels, maybe some of these ideas will turn you into a lover of the prequels or just get your brain kind of flowing with some juicy juices. So we're going to be talking about the Star Wars prequels, how we would have directed them, and things we would have done different with them, with character arcs, directions, plot, pacing, yada yada, you name it, everything Star Wars. So I think to get this bad boy started, my first question for you guys is, and I think we've talked about this a long time ago, but what is the one movie out of the Star Wars prequels that you feel like doesn't need to be fixed or changed or tweaked at all? You wouldn't change a thing
At all?
at all. They would just, and if it's none of them, that's completely fine.
I'd say the least, like there's not one that I wouldn't say something in it needs to be changed, but the least for me, problematic wise, is not my favorite, but the one with the least issues is the Phantom Menace. I thought as a starting point, it was the better of the three as far as consistency and having the least problems in it. And then I think it goes downhill in the second one, even though that's my favorite, and then kind of comes back in the third, but still with a lot of things that could change.
Uh, Not to
Interesting.
do I agree with that, but yeah, I mean the least amount of changes I think is the Phantom Menace, and we can talk about that when we get there. But
Mm,
I don't think it deserves quite the hate that it gets.
no.
No, we've talked about this on the show before about the Phantom Menace and how actually it's got one of the most legendary characters in all of Star Wars, Darth Maul, Dathomirian assassin. Like he's one of the coolest characters in Star Wars. But as in issues go, there were things with George Lucas about, and this is diving down the deep Star Wars theory route, but Jar Jar Binks was the Sith Lord that we were looking for. All right. He was one of the two. He was Darth Jar Jar. He was the Phantom Menace. Well, George was getting a bunch of back flack for other things about the said actor who was voicing Jar Jar and slaying and other stuff that the actor himself was just like, it doesn't bother me, but it's part of the character. But anywho, long they brought in Darth Maul. So I think there's actually quite a few things in the Phantom Menace plot hole wise that could have been maybe answered, more fleshed out, even more backstory about Naboo, one of the oldest cities. Uh, that we know of. Well, this planet, excuse me, it's not a city.
Well, I was gonna let you
And
roll with
no, I can't roll. You correct. If we get something like spewed, like please let us know.
Well,
Like
I knew what you meant.
slap us.
I knew you didn't mean city.
No. Make mistakes. Feed the
I was
Yes.
comments.
resisting the. Oh yes,
But-
yes, do that. Feed the engagement. Bait them.
I know. I was watching our Harry Potter episode the other day, and I realized I said wormwood the entire time, and I'm just like, it's wormtail. It's not wormwood. Why did I keep saying like Grima from Lord of the Rings? I'm like, all right, it was in my head at the time, and I thought I was just strolling, and you know what? It's all right because
I'm not gonna lie to you,
happens.
Nathan. That whole episode, like I kept catching it, but you were on such a roll when you were talking. I didn't want to be like, it's Wormtail, it's Wormtail, it's Wormtail. So I was just like, we're just gonna let it ride, keep going.
Actually, it's Peter Pettigrew.
Yeah.
Say his name.
We're gonna make a truce and a promise from now on. If anybody says a wrong name, correct it on the
Yep.
spot after tangent is over. Just do
Feed
it.
the comments.
Do it.
Bait
Yes.
the hate.
Do it. Fulfill your
Do it.
destiny. But anyways, as planets go, Naboo is one of the oldest, and it's where Chief Palpatine is actually from. So it's like you want to talk about deep diving back to Plagueis, maybe even back to Darth Nihilus days or the Old Republic, Coruscant, Naboo. We already know about Tatooine. I don't want to know anything else about Tatooine, quite frankly. I've spent too much time. It's almost as bad as that crap hole planet that Rey comes from that no one cares about. Anyways, the Attack of the Clones, there wasn't any plot holes in it. It was just the worst written movie for dialogue and just no
Pacing. Pacing killed that movie.
It really did. Episode 3, pacing was actually really good. If not, it should have been longer, quite frankly, to have more of an impact on. It was like execute order 66, and then all of a sudden, it's just Cody goes. He's like, it will be done, and then the next thing we know, like all the Jedi's are gone except for like obviously Kanan Jarrus and some of the Star Wars rebels and et cetera, et cetera. But I think it would have had more. That's why the Clone Wars was so good, because it really had an impactful moment in the final season where you saw Anakin turn to Vader, and then you saw Ahsoka dealing with the clones she was with, and just everything, that climactic moment that you want.
Yes. You got to feel the hit of what Order 66 was. Like
Correct.
this wasn't just a bunch of random CGI guys turning on the Jedi. These were people that Jedi fought with for sometimes years, that they had a bond with, that some would consider brothers. All of a sudden, turn on them. Like there's a tragedy there. There is a loss there that I don't think the second sequel pays enough respect to.
No, definitely not.
As Honest Trailer would said, a completely disposable droid army against a completely disposable clone army. No, seriously, there's no reason to get emotionally involved in any of this crap. But anyways, you're right about that. There was things and Honest Trailer has broken open so many plot holes about the prequel series. I mean, even in the originals too. Like the original Star Wars trilogy is the most sturdy, it's the most well-founded, and the best story overall in all of Star Wars. But the prequels, they have so much more than people give them credit for. And I think it's more in the individual characters themselves. However, we didn't get nearly as much of like Dooku and Plo Koon and even Grievous and Ki-Adi-Mundi and other Star Wars generals and people, members of the council, even stuff with Mace Windu, Grievous, go over to the Ninth Sisters on Dathomir and stuff like Asajj Ventress or other bounty hunters like Cad Bane. I just feel like anyway, I'm rambling. Let's go to a question here. This might be hard and maybe not, but the one character that you would want to change first, their arc and what you would do with it, and at what point you would do it.
You want to go first, Caleb, or you need time to think?
Let me let this one stew a little bit. I hadn't thought about this particularly.
I surprisingly have an answer because I was kind of thinking about this a little bit earlier, and your question just kind of happened to align with it. I know they couldn't go into a lot of the details in Phantom Menace with it, but I think they should have expanded on Qui-Gon Jinn's character and his past and really understood who he was. Because really, most people who have only seen Phantom Menace and not read any of the stuff that involves Qui-Gon earlier in his life know nothing about who he truly is in that moment when he's challenging the rulings of the council and trying to bring Anakin in as a Padawan. And I think if they had really built that character a little bit more of like who he truly was and the struggles he had gone through, then that relationship between him and Obi-Wan and their dynamic would have been a little bit better in the movie than just like, are you sure we should be doing this? Well, you're my boss, so I guess I got to do what you want to do. Whereas Obi-Wan knew Qui-Gon's past, and that's why he questioned him so much while still being like polite in the manner of their relationship, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. And I actually agree with you about Qui-Gon. If there was one character that I would have wanted to see more from the Phantom Menace. First of all, I think the Phantom Menace should have been about a 3 hour long movie. Secondly, I would have wanted to see a little bit more background about Chancellor Palpatine manipulating his way to take over Chancellor Valorum's seat in the High Council of Coruscant. I would have wanted to see more background about Qui-Gon and why he hates the Council so much, and how he got to that point, and how he got to the point of even having a Padawan like Obi-Wan. Because Qui-Gon hated the Council. He hated the idea of the Jedi Council and the rules and all the dogmatic views that they had, similar to what Palpatine quoted to Anakin in the third episode. And there's some books, I don't know if they're canonically accurate or not, but Master and Apprentice is a book written that is very, very good. It's about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan back when Dooku was, Darth Tyrannus was still a Jedi. He was not a Sith Lord. And he never really was to a degree. But anyways, I'm going on a tangent. So Qui-Gon would be the one. If I could change his arc in any way, I would have had a prequel prologue-ish type beginning to the Phantom Menace that was showing us Qui-Gon with Obi-Wan or whatever, maybe training with Dooku or something, and something that led to show us why Qui-Gon hated, or even flashbacks, like make Qui-Gon more of an integral part of the first movie, so that one, his death is more impactful. Two, we understand that why Obi-Wan is taking the responsibility of training Anakin, and three, we just understand one of the most legendary like Jedi masters that ever was. Even like, yeah. So I'm agreeing with you on Qui-Gon. That's kind of what I would do different with him. Now, this would change Star Wars a lot, but if I could change anything, I would have it flip reversed where Qui-Gon killed Darth Maul and it was Obi-Wan who was taken out. His Padawan was killed and Qui-Gon survived, and see how that ended up with Anakin's training and how the story would progress from there.
That would be a unique what if scenario.
That would be a very interesting. You can see him go through this more. I could see him following more of this dark adjacent gray Jedi path that he seemed to be portrayed as anyway.
Yep.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, I know it makes sense as to why and exactly how Obi-Wan killed Maul. But that's an interesting little puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about everything with Qui-Gon and who he is as a character, I mean, he was one of the few Jedis who actually like tempted fate with the dark side, and there's very few Jedis who have ever done that. Luke was one. I mean,
Mace Windu also part of that camp?
Well, Mace Windu channeled the dark
Dabbled.
side while he used Vapad, which was his style of lightsaber technique,
Yes.
which was channeling their energy against them.
Yes.
So was he really feeling?
It was adjacent.
It was adjacent, correct. So there was a lot of people who disagreed with his form of Vapad, though.
Yes.
and
A lot of
Qui-Gon
them were on
included.
the council as well.
Yes, so I actually Qui-Gon might not have been included in that. Qui-Gon might have actually approved of that
I don't think
specific
Qui-Gon
technique.
had a opinion. If it worked, it worked.
Yeah.
It's just, so just imagine how interesting it could have been, though. I mean, you have Obi-Wan, who was the one that was supposed to train, and then Qui-Gon ended up living all the way up until Rebels, and Qui-Gon was the one who had to kill Darth Maul again. And it was Qui-Gon who was around to watch Anakin go to the dark side. It was Qui-Gon who was left around to watch Luke Skywalker.
See, I don't think it goes that way though, because Qui-Gon had
Okay.
enough knowledge of the dark side in that path. He would not have let Anakin be swayed. He would have been keen to
No, I think you're
what
right.
what would have been going on. Now, could it have been Qui-Gon chooses to go to the dark side to spare Anakin that fate? And then you have that dynamic of apprentice having to overcome the master going to the dark side. I could see him choosing that path to prevent Anakin from going down that path. But with Qui-Gon's like wisdom, and his knowledge of that side, I don't see him allowing Anakin to slip through the way Obi-Wan did, because Obi-Wan was not the right master for Anakin. If you honestly ask my opinion about that specific dynamic, it was a situational thing. He's the only one willing to, because of his relationship to Qui-Gon, choose to take Anakin on as an apprentice where no one else would have stepped up in that role. But was he the right fit to guide Anakin? I don't think so. Personally.
Interesting.
But
Very
you could be right too.
interesting. You know,
Well, I
okay.
also think Qui-Gon would have had the nerve to step in and do something.
Yeah,
Like he was an audacious kind of.
he was an act.
Yes, he was a. Well, it's here. Let's solve the problem one way or the other. He didn't care much for the rules, as we were talking about earlier, and he certainly didn't care much for the false decorum.
Mhm. Now, if it did go down that path, somehow Anakin still turns. I do think it would be an interesting dynamic, like what you were talking about, Nathan, to see Qui-Gon have to face Darth Maul again and kill him again, and then to see how Anakin turns and to raise Luke again. It would be, I think, a different Luke. Like, I think he wouldn't have stayed away from Luke like Obi-Wan did. I think he would have been more involved. And I know we saw a
Maybe
little
from the-
bit of that in the Obi-Wan series, but I think he would have been way more involved than Obi-Wan was from a distance.
Possibly even take on the role of foster parent.
Yeah, raising Luke. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Because
Interesting.
with somebody that connected to the Force as he was supposed to have been, you would have need somebody there, kind of guiding and influencing from a young age.
Yeah.
And if you raise Luke like that, there's a very real chance he's not as tempted as a dark side as he is in
later years.
episode 6. Yeah.
Yeah. Thoughts?
This is yeah. I like where your heads are at. These are very interesting thoughts. And I partially agree and I partially disagree. And here
It's War of Nerds, man. Speak your piece.
Yeah. Say it with your chest.
All right, so this is my thought here is you talk about like Qui-Gon would have been able to save Anakin, but do you think Qui-Gon would have been strong enough to be able to go against Palpatine's control he already had over Anakin from the beginning? And this is Palpatine who's been siphoning dark Sith energy from ancient artifacts the entire time he's been in his chambers from the beginning that he took over Valorum.
No question, Palpatine's stronger than Qui-Gon. I will not make that argument whatsoever. I know, and I like Qui-Gon. I'm a huge Qui-Gon fan, but does Qui-Gon allow?
Falls out.
If you look at it, when Palpatine starts manipulating Anakin, yeah, it starts in Phantom Menace, but he's way too young to really be affected by it. Where if you give Qui-Gon and Anakin time to build their relationship that they started from the very beginning, because again, it wasn't Obi-Wan who chose Anakin. He was chained to Anakin out of duty. So their relationship has always been two opposites forced together. Whereas Qui-Gon and Anakin had an instant connection where they wanted to be working with each other, even at that young age. And I
That
think you don't think so?
mm, no, because he didn't have to train Anakin. That wasn't his responsibility. And the council didn't want Anakin to be trained. Obi-Wan was just like, I'm going to do this because this was my master's wishes, and I respect his memory, and I want you to be taken care of. And I care
Correct.
about you too. So he cared about Anakin like a
Yeah,
brother.
I
And
I agree, but he didn't have the same connection Qui-Gon had with him, in my
No.
opinion.
yeah, but I don't know if Qui-Gon really necessarily had a connection with Anakin in the short time they were with each other. Like a connection in the fact that like he saved Anakin from predation, sure, and he brought him onto the ship and was going to teach him the ways of the Force and gave him some tidbits and stuff. But if you remember, like, um, it was Padme he spent most of his time with, and even when the fight at the end with Darth Maul and stuff happened, like I feel like Anakin actually had more conversations with Obi-Wan towards the latter part than Qui-Gon. And so I don't know if it was necessarily who's to say, right? Like
Yeah.
on Tatooine when they were there for the pod racing, which is hands down best scene in Star Wars.
Now this is pod racing.
Exactly. It's working. It's working. My tongue is it. Don't do that. So anyways, I don't know. It's such a tough question to try to attempt to what if. That's why it's all about what if. But
Yeah.
um I do
If
believe
I
that
may.
Obi-Wan,
Go ahead.
let me finish this really
Yep.
quick and then
Go
it's all
ahead.
yours. Obi-Wan was not strong enough in the Force nor his training at any point in his walk to be able to handle what Anakin was going to become. And because Anakin was going to be defiant, because he was going to naturally be stubborn, and especially after what happened to his mother with the Sand People and how strong of a grip Palpatine had on him at that point in time, and because of how strict the Jedi Council was, at that point there was nothing Obi-Wan could have done.
No.
There was nothing he could have done, and he wouldn't have been able to beat Palpatine either. So
That I agree
he
with.
was left in that crappy situation. So at the end of the day, things would have been different if Qui-Gon would have survived because Qui-Gon was full of wisdom and Qui-Gon was probably more wise than he was under probably Yoda when it came to wisdom. I would say there wasn't any more people who were wise, not wisdom in the sense of like centuries of knowledge, but wisdom in the sense of just
Experience,
I don't
Yeah.
insight.
yeah, it's hard to explain, but
No,
go ahead.
I know what you're saying. I
Go
just
ahead,
wanted
Caleb.
to I have a little bit of a unique perspective on this, I think, because I do work at a lot of summer camps, and there are a lot of times that like none of these kids are biologically mine, right? I
Mhm.
am. I do have a nephew, and he's my favorite human, but none of these kids are biologically mine. There are most of them have. Well, that's not fair. Some of them do have like they're friends of the family. They're their kid. They're their kids. But there's a handful of them that I have no ties to whatsoever. However, by the end of that week, um, they're almost I don't want to say miniature versions of me because I don't want to unleash that on the world. But there is a connection there simply and solely because I was there and I took a valid interest in whatever it is that they were either into or going through, or I just took the time to give them a silly nickname. So I think I don't Nathan, I don't think you're wrong. I think you have a very valid point. Just think, oh, especially when you're dealing with kids as young as Annie was in Phantom Menace, just a little bit of that investment goes a long ways, and it pays out in dividends. I think if that relationship was nurtured a little bit more and it was allowed time to grow and Qui-Gon wasn't taken quite so soon, I think we would have had a very radically different Anakin.
Hmm.
I think
And
the influence Palpatine had would have not have been counteracted entirely. In fact, it very well might have played out the same way, but that struggle, it would have been a weaker hold.
I agree with you, Caleb. I do think there's just Palpatine literally controlled every step of the way, and I wouldn't put it
Yes,
past.
no. Yeah, yes, you are correctly, absolutely correct.
And I wouldn't even put it past Palpatine. It wouldn't surprise me if Palpatine was the one behind his mother, Anakin's mother, being killed.
Yeah,
Like, you don't
absolutely.
think he wouldn't have control over the Sand People? Like, sure,
Absolutely.
they're indigenous people to the Sands, but like, and they, like, do they even speak a language like understandable besides grunts and screams? Well, I'm sure they do. And
Mhm.
Palpatine has more money than probably anybody else. Like, he's one of the most powerful senators, chancellors in the entire galactic republic. So,
Absolutely Machiavellian level schemer.
Mhm.
so who wouldn't have said that Palpatine didn't take a little trip over to Tatooine and literally disguise himself as somebody else with Sith alchemy because he's very good at using Sith alchemy.
Mhm.
And he gave a bunch of money to the Sand People and said, "Kill Shmi Skywalker and make it look like it was just you and nothing else."
Mhm.
Or there's nothing saying he didn't do it himself and blame the Sand People.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And he said, "You're just going to hold her captive
Yeah,
here,
Mhm.
and
he might have just
as
killed
bait."
everybody there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. And they're like, "So we're basically sacrificing ourselves for you," except for them would have been like, and like, "Yes, but don't worry because your family members will be taken care of. All you have to do is call 1-800-STAR to get a hold of Coruscant's best direct representatives for any type of total life loss. You will be represented by the best Sith Lord in the galaxy."
Vader.
Exactly. All right.
So I know we've been
So
on
Darth Jar Jar.
I
That's
know
that's
we've
the
been on this for a while, but I
I
just
was about
wanted
to change it. So
I
yeah.
wanted to touch one thing before we moved on. And I agree, it would be a very interesting story to see Qui-Gon carry on and Anakin still change. I don't think um that would change Palpatine's plan. Either way, he doesn't manipulate. All those pieces were not manipulated just for Anakin to become Vader. He manipulated everything to take control for himself. He was still the
Yes.
emperor. All that was planned. That was just a move, one of the
Mhm.
chess moves he made. Um,
Yep.
but when it came to Qui-Gon versus Obi-Wan, you touched on it earlier where Obi-Wan was more of like a brother to Anakin. And I think Qui-Gon would have been more of a father figure. And I think Caleb mentioned that too, that relationship
Yeah.
dynamic would have been a little bit different. But not just that, Qui-Gon's recklessness, or not recklessness, rebelliousness, would have fed Anakin in a different way. Whereas Obi-Wan tried to snuff it out when he could, which he had very little control over Anakin's actions, but he would reprimand him for him. Where I think if Qui-Gon got to see Anakin come to that age, he would have encouraged it in the right times. You can be rebellious, you can challenge these rules, but only in
But
this scenario where you're not crossing this line. And he would have had an actual line, whereas Obi-Wan was like, here's the line, but Anakin's already 100 paces past it, and he keeps
mhm.
moving that line as Anakin's going further that direction. So I do think that dynamic would have been vastly different. Could he still change? Palpatine's still
Yeah,
a master. He would have
Palpatine.
changed
Yeah.
his routine, but I definitely think that dynamic would have played a different role. I don't think it would have gone the same way. Could it still end up there? And would it be a very interesting story? Yes, because I do like Qui-Gon better than Obi-Wan. So seeing him in that, yeah, I know
Good
that's probably
talk. Good
controversial.
talk.
But you see though, this we're talking more what if, like we don't
Correct.
know. But you see,
Yeah.
we're the ones
Changing
redoing
it.
the
Yeah.
prequel.
Yeah.
So what we would do is keep Qui-Gon alive, and actually no, you would have to let him sacrifice himself because that's the
Well,
only way that Vader could become Vader.
I mean, he still could. He could still it could still play out the same way, and Qui-Gon just takes Obi-Wan's place. But also, again, if we're doing our own versions of it and we're changing what happens, this is the beauty of it. Each one of us is a writer with a different idea of what
Oh,
the
yeah.
direction could go. My opinion, I really like the idea that Qui-Gon sacrifices himself to be the pawn to spare Anakin, and it's a completely different story at that point. But then you lose Luke Skywalker never happens the way it happens because his connection isn't there anymore. He's not fighting his father, he's fighting his father's former apprentice. And
that also takes out the redemption of Anakin.
correct.
Then now what is left to redeem Qui-Gon?
Okay,
That's
hear
a very
this.
good point.
Just like the dude from Infinity War. Hear this and rejoice. You will now be the children of Thanos.
No, I
Be
won't.
glad that your meaningless lives.
Be quiet, Squidward.
Silence, Squidward. Earth is closed
Silence,
today. Your powers are quaint. You must be popular with children. Anyways,
I am. Thank you.
same, right? All right, so you take Qui-Gon, and here's a. Okay, hold on. This is such a hard one. Well, all right, we're gonna put a pause on Qui-Gon, and we're gonna come back to him later.
Well, yeah. Did Caleb answer if he would change someone different? If there was a character in those movies you would are gonna change, or
I
you
did.
come
Not.
up
I
with
was hoping I could dodge that.
no?
Oh, you did not. Sorry.
Okay, I don't know how controversial this is. But I am a pragmatist at heart. And what the prequels are is essentially the story of how we get this sweet little Annie into the murderous psychopath Darth Vader. Right? Your lack of faith is disturbing and just crushes a guy without even touching him. I think I would. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I would almost completely redo Anakin's arc. I think, particularly in Attack of the Clones, right?
Yeah.
That was that was so painful. It was mostly just standing and walking and talking and a lot of talk no jitsu, and then the worst look I've had a lot of bad one-liners. I've had a lot of really bad pickup lines, but I don't like sand. It's nothing like you. It's probably the worst thing I've ever seen on the page. Second to only somehow Palpatine returns. What I would have liked to have seen. What I would have liked to have seen was Anakin get his precious little head filled with promises of, if we want to go back to a Star Wars motif, delusions of grandeur. I would have liked for him to have been to have seen Qui-Gon get to mentor and nurture him a little bit more. And then when he sees Qui-Gon die, or hears of Qui-Gon's death, however we want to go about that, there's a little chink in the armor. And then Attack of the Clones is all about building him back up, only to have him crushed again when the Council basically recommends he stay away from Padme. Because
It's not fair.
We can't have love. We can't have love and be Jedi because we cannot have emotional attachment. And then we watch that get ripped away. And then I really like the idea of having Palpatine behind, I'll say, the assassination of his mother. And we'll just watch everything systematically be taken away from him that he was promised. He was promised to have a good life. He was promised to have power. He was promised a seat on the council, at least alluded to it. And one by one, the foundation on which he built his life up since he was like 8 years old begins to crumble. And then with each piece that is taken out, we see a little bit more of this hate, a little bit more of this fear, a little bit more of this anger that has been compressed and bottled up and suppressed, not allowed to be expressed openly, bubble up to the surface. And we watch systematically as this kid, everybody thought was going to be the next, the Jedi Master, right? The Yoda. Suddenly go berserk. Starts with a bunch of sand people that nobody really knows about until later. And then it's the younglings. And then it's his fellow Jedi. And then we get to the scene, the fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Don't forget, he took out all of Viceroy's from the
Oh,
old
yes.
and that was when his eyes turned yellow. That was
Yes.
truly when he flipped over. Before Obi-Wan, well, Padme came and Obi-Wan, you turned her against me.
Yes. Yeah, and we could even have Palpatine work on Padme too, like plant these ideas that or have an agent plant ideas that he's there's somebody else, or he doesn't want he's just using her for clout, basically.
Mhm.
I would have really liked to have seen them build Anakin up and then just crush him. Like I
And
said, I'm
that
not
be the
sure exactly.
reason.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I could
just
see that.
everything he was promised was been systematically basically taken away, and it appears is the Jedi Council is behind it because it's their code.
Hmm.
And then his mother dies and he can't even avenge her. Like, mm, that would set. Look, I'm a fairly peaceable guy. I'm fairly laid back, but that would set me off if everything I worked for has been taken away from me by people that had basically promised it to me my entire life. And then when something goes wrong and I they tell me I can't do anything about it, and I have somebody whispering angry nothings in my ear, telling me to give in to the power of the dark side. Yeah.
3 evil head turns. You ever hear a tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise? It's like, no, I didn't. Tell me more. You can control many clients to create life. Can I learn this power? Not from a Jedi. Like Anakin, come on, man. He didn't know by that point.
Yep.
Anyways, all right. So now we kind of know our individual characters. Me and Ryan are kind of on the same page with Qui-Gon. This, for my listeners out there, I have a fly that has been tormenting me the entire day
Well, I got
inside of
mine.
my.
I got mine. We were talking about the other day.
I can't still haven't gotten my fly, but I'm going to right now.
I'm
One
going to
second.
mount him, make a trophy out of him, and
All right, I think I have destroyed him.
hang him above my billboard, my cork
Be
board.
destroyed, Lord of Flies. All right, so we now
Yes,
know Anakin is for CS, for Caleb. For you and I, it's more on the Qui-Gon side of things. And for me, even Palpatine, I would have liked to seen some things different with him. Even.
yes,
Um,
Palpatine was my second choice.
but now, if you could take which movie, let's say that in movie 2. So the next question is, in which movie would you remove? What scenes would you remove, and what would you add in replacement of, or what would you leave the same, and what would you add to it? Um, we'll start with that question, and uh, well, you guys want to go, or I can start us off.
Either way, you got an answer, Caleb, or
I'm sorry, my sister texted me. I thought it was important, but it was not. What was it? Can you repeat the question for me?
Sure. Doon, 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 doon. Would you like 50-50 or help from the audience?
Help from the audience! Help from the audience!
So the question is, in each of the 3 prequels, and which movie, um, pick one of the movies, and we'll go one by one or whatever. But what scenes would you take away and add something else to it, or what would you leave the same and add to, et cetera, et cetera. So what parts would you leave the same? What parts would you add? What parts would you take away? How would you finagle that and make it into a brand new
Hmm.
storyline? And which movie would it be for? So you
if
look
you,
like you're in thought. I'll start if you
yeah, go
want.
ahead, Nathan,
I-
or whoever has one.
So movie 2, right? Well, each in the Phantom Menace and in Star Wars 3, we both start with a space scene, which space scenes are always the greatest to start with because they add some sort of excitement. Uh, Attack of the Clones, I don't even remember how the movie starts because It was that poorly paced. I know that the worm pooping shooting robot assassin was coming after Padme, and Anakin was just like, nothing to think about Padme for the last 10 years. Oh, I love her so much. Jar Jar. Why doesn't she like me looking at me? Because you're creepy, bro. Like, you're now an angsty teenager who's like going after like like, dude, you need to chill. All right. You need to like back off. So, anyways, you see Anakin and he comes in and he's got is just I don't know. Anakin's energy in the second movie is just off.
Oh,
Um,
it's so bad.
Hayden Christensen does a great job playing with the words he's given to speak, because no, like Honest Trailer had it right. Good luck getting it right. Like, they can't take away my new power. There's nothing that. Anyways, my point
Yeah,
is
that
stands. So
it's the directing and the writer department really screwed him over.
yeah, it's
That poor
anyways, what I
guy.
would do with the beginning of the movie is I would start it off with either I would literally start the movie off with Anakin and Obi-Wan with the assassin, like the literally the robot, the robot. Lord have mercy on my mouth. The worm trying to attack Padme. I would have had that happen as like the very beginning of the movie. Like, you don't even know who it is. Like, you just see it's this like assassin coming up to this window. You see somebody sleeping in bed, and then eventually you see it's Padme by just her face. And then outside her door, you see Anakin and Obi-Wan standing there, maybe talking to each other or whatever. And you start with that scene. So that raises the intensity of the movie right then and there. All right. So boom, they do that. Then they go after the assassin and find out that Boba Fett or Jango Fett is involved. Um, and that was the best arc of the whole movie, was Obi-Wan going to Kamino and literally meeting with Jango Fett, and like the fight with Obi-Wan and Jango Fett and just Kamino in general. Like, that was probably one of the coolest parts of all of Attack of the Clones. Um, I mean, the ending arena fight was awesome too, but that's what I would have done. I would have started the movie off a little bit quicker, a little bit more intense. I would have had Anakin chill down the creep factor a little bit more, and like, still confess his love. Obviously, still go with Padme to her homeland and protect her and keep her safe. You know, with the prancing rhinos and the floating apples and peaches. But just literally, maybe we don't have to be suffered to all of those scenes. Like, I get it, it's building his character, but do I have to watch him float a peach to her? It is like painstakingly awfully bad. I I like I like cringe every time I watch it. That's how bad it is.
It's really
And
bad.
kudos to Natalie Portman for being able to actually pretend like she gave a crap in that scene. Um, because Padme certainly didn't want to be there. Anyways, so I would have changed a little bit of how overall the dynamic between Anakin and Padme was just really bad in the second movie, up until the point where they were captured on Geonosis. Then it felt real. Then it felt more natural and normal. Like, or actually, I would say when Padme was going with Anakin to find his mother. So they went and saw Lars and all that stuff. Then it actually felt, the dynamic felt real. The pacing was really good. We already knew that Dooku was involved in some way, shape, or form. Obi-Wan was already captured, right? Because he was going after Jango Fett, who was working for Dooku. So those were the parts of the movie that I felt were great. Like, anything that had to do with Jango Fett, anything where Dooku was around because he's one of the coolest Star Wars villains of all time, and anything that Obi-Wan and his missions that he was given. It was the first half of the movie. If you could have literally just taken a vacuum cleaner and sucked out all of the wipes and just literally made it flow better, the movie would have been that much better. So what I would have added in the first half of the movie is, man, when you think about Star Wars, it really is just a bunch of politics, walking and talking, and um, Jedi Council members complaining, and Palpatine manipulating. Gosh, I don't know you know what? Somebody else go, because my brain's not working right now. So
I'll jump in
those are a
because
couple things.
I'm
Go ahead.
100% on board with you exactly, and I can pick up exactly where you
Doggone
left
it.
off. Are you on the
Thank
same
you.
one? So, okay,
Yes.
we've talked about these three before, but literally Attack of the Clones is my favorite of the first three movies. And despite all the hate it gets, I think the Geonosis stuff is some of the best action. The clones and going to find the clone army to initiate it and arriving just in time to fight that battle. The Jedi showdown on Geonosis, like all that stuff is exactly what Star Wars is about, and I love it. The scenes that slow it down is all the romance pacing. And if you take out those scenes, they still want to build not just Anakin's character, but the relationship between Anakin and Padme. And I think it needs to be built differently.
That's good root beer.
Sprecher's is always good.
Like
yeah.
Geonosis, how they were together and they had to fight with each other to
Correct.
protect each other. That's
So,
love.
Yes.
That's romance.
And that's what their love's built on. I don't think it was like this slow burn romance that they were trying to build it into. Her first
No.
reactions with Padme and Anakin and the Phantom Menace were he was the childlike, innocent kid, and she was the I have the strict regime that I have to do because like I'm royalty, like I have all these things that have to be done a certain way, and there is no room for breaking the rules. So they kind of are this opposites attract naturally in the first movie, even though I know there's that weird age gap in the first movie that just gets ignored when you go into the second one because everything's okay by then. But that aside, if you want to keep that romance, you keep her being she's trying to rebel and be this more adventurous woman, but she still has her rules. And Anakin is still the child who breaks the rules, and that's their dynamic. He pulls her on adventures. So you have the first assassination attempt. That draws them to Naboo. They go to Naboo, they're hiding out. Instead of the romance scenes, they go do something that gets them in trouble again. It may not be another assassination attempt, but they have something that puts them in peril that either she has to save him or he has to save her, but it's not super significant.
Dude,
like they're in
you just
danger.
fixed it.
Yeah, they're in danger, but not super in danger like the rest of the movie because you have to build those stakes. So they have to have something like that. Then the Lars thing happens with Smee, and they have to go to Tatooine and then deal with that, and then they end up at Geonosis. And I think you take out the long drawn, because again, we talked about it's a pacing issue with that movie. They drew it out so much trying to build that romance in an hour of slowness where they cut to a different area and they give you a little bit of information like Obi-Wan going to Camino, I think it's Camino, to check on the clones and like follow that trail. They keep cutting to scenes about that, but then you go right back to the romance and it just again is drawn out. So like there's no action for a good 45 minutes of that movie where there's no tension, there's no stakes, and you're just along for the ride getting this info dump sent at you in the most boring way possible. And I think if they had done that a little differently with some more stakes early on, even if it didn't align with another assassination attempt or anything, or maybe it was Palpatine pushing them together. So he rigs something, not an assassination this time, but he does something that puts them in a situation they shouldn't be in, and they have to get out of it together, and that drives them together because he wants them to be together so he can pull them apart and bring Anakin to the dark side. So I mean, you have another attempt for him to manipulate. Go ahead.
Like a Battlefront 2 scene, literally on Naboo, right? They're going there, but Palpatine sent somebody like Cad Bane or another bounty hunter after them because he wants, well, truthfully, he wants Anakin with no distractions, right? If it was probably up to Palpatine, he would have never wanted Anakin to have any kids at all, quite frankly.
Yes, but he also wanted him to build those attachments that could be broken and push him to the dark side.
100%.
So preventing the kids from being born probably would have been his ultimate goal while still building that relationship. So yeah.
So you send Cad Bane, a bounty hunter like that, after them on Naboo. You got a little bit of action. You got a little bit of Anakin protecting her, maybe like grabbing her and being like, my lady. And she's like, it's still creepy. He's like, whatever. And then, they keep doing it and stuff like that. But at least you don't have to watch him float a freaking peach across the table or like tussle with stupid Naboo rhinos or whatever. And like Padme being like, Annie, Annie, Annie. And then like this Anakin just being like tackling her like, oh, I'm okay. It's like,
Are
you
you
know,
okay, Annie? Annie, are you
and
okay?
are you okay? Are
Are you
you
okay?
okay? Are you
Sorry,
okay, Annie?
I held that back so much, and then you asked if he was
No, that
okay.
was that was beautiful, man. That's great.
Ah.
Caleb, what are your thoughts on this?
So we're not saying the same thing. I'm thinking of a different angle to take this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Attack of the Clones, isn't that doesn't that open up with a bunch of negotiations or scheduled negotiations? Yeah.
I think that's the first one
It's
with
been
Phantom Menace, where they're
no,
trading with the trade thing, and
the
then
Trade Federation,
Qui-Gon and
Obi-Wan and
Obi-Wan are
Anakin.
there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Yep.
Attack of the
Okay, okay. Never mind. Never
yeah.
mind. Well,
Uh,
I'm getting things mixed up in my head.
that's
Oh
fine.
wait,
But it doesn't matter.
it starts with Padme Padme's her double, her queen, whoever the double is of
Gets blown up. Yeah.
her ship is blown up
Yep.
and they're
Okay.
landing.
Okay.
And then Anakin and Obi-Wan, you see them and you see Anakin how he looks, and then they first run into Padme. They're assigned to detail her. Obi-Wan's just like, I don't want to do this because this is boring.
Yeah.
Um,
Because in the first 4 minutes,
anyways,
there's 2 assassination attempts.
Yeah. I
correct, yeah.
it doesn't matter. It was just going to be another segue in, but it still
Yeah.
works. But Nathan, I believe you were the one that mentioned if you sit back and think about it, Star Wars is really just a bunch of politicking, walking, and talking.
Mhm.
And I think, um, what if we leaned into that a little bit more instead of making it a slow burn frenemies to lovers with a little bit of action on the side, we make it a political espionage. We make it a what's the word, an intrigue film.
Mhm.
A lot of Machiavellian chess moving. We can really put Yoda and Palpatine, seeing how they manipulate the field to their advantage. We lean into the politicking a little bit more, the assassinations, the espionage, the who's really controlling the clones, who's really behind these assassination attempts. And if we can keep most of the movie the same, remove almost literally all of the romance stuff that slows the plot down and
Mhm.
bogs everything down. I don't care that much about a peach. If I wanted a peach, I will go to my cabinet and grab one with my hands. I don't need you to space magic it to me.
Yeah. Or I'll play Mario. Thanks.
Yeah, or literally anything else. Literally anything else. But if we put them, oh my, who do we trust?
Yeah.
Who do we trust? Like, is Obi-Wan one of them? So it's only me and you. I say we leave. And that sets off on the Tatooine stuff. We can go talk to mom, see what mom says. And go through all these. And we can get to the same spots, and we can have all the different cuts. But if we frame it in this kind of like spy thriller frame instead of an action with a lot of quote unquote romance, if we want to call it that, and put it in this spy thriller, almost 007 style lens, I think we would have. I think we probably would have done better, at least with the core audience. I don't know how it would play to the younger audience.
Mhm.
Hmm.
It would have been interesting to see more of the politicking and the jockeying for power as opposed to talk no jitsu.
Actually, that's kind of perfect because Padme's from Naboo, just like Palpatine. And
Mhm.
if he's playing the whole politically espionage, assassination, obviously the assassination attempts were set by Palpatine. Like this is no
Yes.
joke.
Yeah,
Like
we as
he's
the
the one,
audience know that.
right. Like, well, I don't even know if some of the audience even knew that. I think there are people who legitimately thought like Jango Fett was the one doing this. So it's like, who do you think is in charge of Jango Fett?
Yeah, who's
They're
paying
like,
Django?
Darth Dooku. I'm like, who do you think's in charge of Dooku? Oh, right, yeah, right. So,
Probably.
what you could do is you have the second assassination attempt where the worm pooping robot tries to eat Padme in her sleep, and then you have Anakin and Obi-Wan go after said um, assassin, take them. Well, the Jango Fett kills her with the dart, the poison dart. But at that point in time, Padme, if she wants to find out anything about espionage, first of all, in the Clone Wars, Padme was one of the most awesome characters, like
Yes.
written of who she was, how like just much of a freaking BA she was. Like she was just awesome.
Yeah, it gives
And then
this
the line,
literally gives her a superpower, so to speak.
exactly. Like she's great with diplomacy. She's great with a blaster. She's smart. She's
Mm-hmm.
crafty.
Mm-hmm.
And she was basically just made into a barefoot and pregnant mother, and a politician
Oh
in the
Lord,
live
yeah.
action movies.
She
So,
was.
I mean,
Yeah.
basically what she was, man. Like essentially, episode 3, she was nothing more than a pregnant mom, and that was pretty much it. And staring out of windows. And so what I really going
Hey,
with what you said, Caleb. I'm just saying. Um,
those
you
windows
take
are
her, she
nice.
takes Anakin. I know. And she takes Anakin to Naboo like normal,
Hmm.
but they're going on a fact-finding mission to figure
Yes.
out who's behind this espionage. And they run into another assassination attempt by perhaps like Cad Bane or another assassin that they could tie into like the animated shows later on or whatever. And there you go. You've got that excitement. But you could have a meeting where they're like they stop for like one of her favorite places in the countryside to eat like a quick bite, and she's like, "Isn't this a nice break from all the assassination attempts and like just the
Da,
endless
da,
like
da.
dead ends we've had?" And Anakin's just like, "Yeah, let me float you a peach, so you can still have your freaking floating peach.
No,
You
leave
can
the
have your cake and
peach.
well, for the peach floaters who like it, you can have your cake and eat it too. I'm just saying, I would prefer without the floating peaches. I don't think it adds anything whatsoever, but
They do make a nice cobbler.
they do. And so, like, you want to show me some, like, Star Trek, Doctor Whovian, weird space magic turn floating peach into a peach cobbler, like, right on. But otherwise, so I think we've all come to the consensus that what we would do with episode 2 is basically just nip the romance and the slow pacing in the butt, rearrange it into a more meaningful romance that has to do with some sort of action, espionage, running for their lives, figuring something out. I like it. I
Yeah,
think we just solved Disney's biggest problem.
I agree. Can I add a little bit to that too? Um,
Yeah, knock yourself out.
Nope, door's closed.
oh dang, so close. Um, So the first thing, as soon as you said like the space politics, I immediately thought West Wing with Palpatine just walking down a hallway with people behind him and they're just talking, and then all of a sudden they're on a Death Star or a Star Destroyer and they're walking down the hall discussing plans and stuff like that. And just like the thought of Palpatine walking and people following him and having that conversation just made me laugh. But I think the twist for that politics could be, I know Palpatine was behind those assassination attempts, but it was also like the Trade Federation didn't like Padme
Mm-mm.
disrupting their stuff. Could they make it where Palpatine has the manipulation, the control, but it doesn't mean people always did exactly what he wanted. He had to keep making moves. So say the Trade Federation starts making assassination attempts on Padme and he didn't clear it. So then there's a conversation between him and the leader of the Trade Federation. The time's not right yet. You're acting too hastily. And they're doing this of their own accord. He's not ready to pull that trigger yet. And then you have that politics intrigue where you're not necessarily showing Palpatine having that conversation, but just like they did in Phantom Menace, where you have the Emperor talking to them without the face reveal, you can do the same thing and you have more clues to what's going on. Whereas I think, as much of a grand manipulator as he was, I think they could have done with having things not go and having him have to pivot or like condemn people to death for doing what he didn't want them to do. And that adds a little bit more intrigue and who's really the bad guy, who's really pulling the strings type thing before you actually reveal. Because we've talked about this before. I didn't make the connection that Palpatine was the Emperor in Phantom Menace. It wasn't until Attack of the Clones that I put it together. And I know like the idea is there, but all you see in Phantom Menace really is like the chin, and you can kind of make the connection. But then in Attack of the Clones, they start get like handing you clues left and right. And I think they could have slow built that reveal for the people who didn't catch on or know beforehand for all the people who had like read the books or been exposed to it prior to watching the movies. I think it's something it could have built a little bit more too, because obviously the reveal doesn't come till the third movie, but a lot of people pick up on it in the second one.
I'll see your point and I'll raise you another.
Okay.
I like what you're saying with the Trade Federation and these other factions, because Star Wars is nothing without its factions.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can add, because I mean, no one's arguing Palpatine is a brilliant schemer. I think we can use that to add a level of obscurity.
Mm-hmm.
We can have him, we can present him as making, negotiations. Like he's pitting these people against each other. So he might be the one whispering into the Trade Federation that Padme is possibly, and we may know it's him, we may not. Either way. But what this does, going through these other people without necessarily paying them, just influencing them with information, it gives a level of plausible deniability in case his plan A, B, C, and D fails. He has a way of washing his hands of it, going, I don't know what they're doing. I'm just a chancellor. I'm just a senator. I'm trying to keep these people, healthy, law-abiding citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a couple different ways we can take that, and I think using the factions as tools would totally be something he would be more than willing to do.
I like that. And I think legitimately we just made the Attack of the Clones 20 times better than the original. And if we could put it out right now, I guarantee if we put it back out into the box office, into theaters, it would outgross all the Star Wars movies.
I can make sock puppets in cardboard settings.
There we go. We're good to go. That's perfect.
It was me the whole time. No.
So my here's another question for you guys. Because we're running up there on our time, but let's, and we'll do another episode on this too for our listeners, because there's just so much that goes into doing crafting and anything like this. This is very similar to episodes we've done about villain creation, character creation, crafting, anything like that. So there's always a lot that goes into these episodes, a very methodical and intellectual conversations. So, all right, I've always been down the Star Wars theory route that Palpatine used Sith alchemy to hide his true form, and that he was the one that killed Padme and used Sith, literally used the midichlorian thing that he was talking about. The story he told Anakin is that he already knew how to do it. Like, shocker. And so there's a lot of like deep routes with Palpatine theory, how he's from the same state planet as Padme, and same thing with the Gungans and Jar Jar. But that's for another. Did you guys hate the Gungans or did you like them? I like the Gungans. I thought they were good.
I thought it fit with the dynamic between forgive me, but I don't know what her faction was called. I don't know if they were just the Naboo and then the Gungans, both on Naboo, but I liked the connection between the two. One being more of an old school, less technology, even though they had some pretty advanced technology to live under the water, but the way they fought was inferior to what the technology was at the time. But to be able to cross that path and still be impactful in battle, I thought that connection was good. So I didn't mind the Gungans. I like Jar Jar Binks as a character. I know it got old and the shtick kind of wore off after a while, but like, people didn't really get to that till the second movie. The first movie, people were like okay with it. They're like, oh, he's the comic relief. And then the second movie, they're okay, why is the comic relief all of a sudden like given all this power and responsibility? Like, why are you giving the bumbling fool? Yes, I agree with your fan theory.
Darth Jar Jar.
Yeah. But realistically, if you're court jester, you're not making your court jester your stand-in for the king. for the day. You have a line of people that you're putting ahead of that person. So
That's fair, but Darth Jar Jar, the Dark Agent, right where he needs to be, in plain sight, but hidden. Perfect agent for Palpatine to use at any time. And he's so like acts like a bumbling fool, like my like you think, oh, he's just this stupid like Qui-Gon hated
yeah.
him so much. He's just like, don't do that again. He grabbed his tongue and he's just like, frick. Anyways, but if you could have changed a character like Jar Jar and had it be a different character, something else, or had Jar Jar be something different from what he was moving forward past the Phantom Menace, what would he have been for you?
I mean, again, I just would have limited his role going forward, but I think in the first movie he was fine.
Yeah, I would have literally like put him on a starship and blew him into Kingdom Come. Um, not really, but he would have been no longer. I would have just been like, yeah, thank you for your help. You can stay on Naboo forever and enjoy the water. We thanks. Um, but yeah, I would have liked to have seen. I don't know about you guys, but I would have liked to have seen a Star Wars 1.5 movie about the Clone Wars or 2.5, sorry.
Yeah, 2.5.
I would have liked to have seen a 1.5 and a 2.5, quite frankly. Like little in between movies or little spin-off or like little just kind of like looks into um maybe even seeing like Thrawn when he first met Anakin during the Clone Wars and that leading Thrawn to what he became, becoming literally the most tactician genius tactician that the Empire ever had. And he's also my favorite Star Wars character, period, through the books and the movies. Don't you shake your head about Thrawn. You
No,
salute, sir.
I was
Oh,
I was
I'm not.
agreeing with
I'm
you.
agreeing with you.
No,
Ron
no, no,
isn't.
no. I saw Ryan. I thought he was going like,
Oh,
No,
"Ugh,
no.
disappointment."
I was just gonna say, like, we could go down a rabbit hole with that of movies. Like, instead of making new ones that go past where they are, there's tons of content that they can go backwards and deal with. So I think you're right there.
Yeah, like the
Caleb,
old
thoughts on
Republic.
Gungans?
uh,
Yeah, we can
Or
these
skip. We can.
movies.
Mm,
These movies came out when I was a wee little baby. All right. So Jar Jar hit when I was, I don't know, how old was I when that movie came out?
how old are you now?
I'm 30.
2002 was Attack of the Clones. So either 2001 or 2000, I think, was the
Okay,
You
first
so
would
one.
have been
I would have been probably starting my kindergarten year around that time.
2006, 7, 8. You would have been 8, like me, in
For
2002.
Phantom?
No,
Oh,
for
two,
Attack on the
yeah.
Clones.
Two,
Yeah,
I was 7 or 8.
yeah. I was 5 when the Phantom Menace came out.
Yeah, I was right around kindergarten.
I'm so
Um,
old.
No, you're not. Hush. You're only like 33 or 34.
I'm
36.
sorry. I'm sorry. What was that? Let me turn
Oh
on my
yeah,
ears.
36. That's
Uh,
okay. You're still young.
I
You're
know.
still
Well,
young.
the kids at camp tell me you're not old till you're 31, so I've got another good year in me.
Hey, my
Oh
grandpa
no,
said
no, no! That happens at the end of the month. Oh no! Oh, I'm done.
my
But
grandpa
anyway,
said
to
life.
answer your question, um,
Yeah.
I don't mind the Gungans. I don't mind them as a people, as a species. And to your point, Ryan, the way they, I think, it's not necessarily more primitive. I just think that's how you have to fight underwater in this
Mm,
world. Like you can't really necessarily take a blaster down there, and lightsabers. I don't know how effective they'd be underwater. There'd be a lot of cavitation. There'd be a lot of when you get something that hot in a lot of water, things go AWOL pretty quick.
yeah.
So it's probably just how you have to fight in an aquatic environment.
Mm,
And the fact that they were shown to not only be to match a lot of the modern high tech fighters, but uh, be formidable when pitted against them was a. I think that was a nice touch, and I think Jar Jar's character could have been utilized in a rather fascinating aspect, and pardon me. That is, we get to see the comic relief kind of sober up and become a little bit more cynical on the world. Uh, Once he leaves his little bubble dome, and he realized the world isn't quite as lax and as happy-go-lucky as he might think it is. We get to see him become a bit more bitter. We get to see him become a bit more take things a bit more seriously, which would make sense giving him a little bit of that power. And it would have been interesting to see what he would have done with that authority. Uh, when basically Palpatine said, "Hey, give it to me. I'll promise I'll give it back. Pinky's not crossed, but
I
everything
would
else
never lie
has."
about. I would never lie about this. I'm the Chancellor. I'm your friend. I
Yeah,
only have
I've
an
got
evil sounding voice when I speak. Nothing to worry about.
and I've got if you give me the power, I've got a van full of puppies, popcorn, and ice cream right there waiting for you. Nothing bad's gonna happen.
My last question for you guys, and then we'll wrap this up, is um, if you could have
Kick
another
the can,
movie
sorry.
or series come out that hasn't been done yet from an exploration of Star Wars at any point, what would you want that movie or series to be?
Acolyte. Sorry. I couldn't help myself.
Nathan's 100% with you.
Yeah, that show can burn for all I care. And I don't want to see anything about that ever again. I would rather Old Republic would be good for me.
I would love Old Republic.
Anything
I
with
would
Darth
love some
Revan,
Old
Darth
Republic
Nihilus,
stuff.
Darth Nihilus, um, Darth Bane, any of that stuff would be awesome. Ryan, what about you? You look like you're very concentrated.
Sorry, I got an email that I had to answer.
Oh, you're good.
I definitely like Revan. I do like that line. Qui-Gon would be another one. I think
Yeah.
going even a different direction where you give like an Ahsoka instead of a show, you give her a movie of like something that happened. I don't think you touch Clone Wars, um, unless you don't do a specific episode. You could take content from the Clone Wars and continue it of characters went off for a little while. You don't see them for a little while. What happened during that time span? But I don't think you turn one or two episodes from the Clone Wars into a full length movie. If you do anything with the Clone Wars, because it's one of the best attempts at doing Star Wars content they've put out. And if you do it wrong, you will taint that. And I know there's talks or it's in the works of them trying to turn it into a live action. I don't know if that's the best idea. If it does work out, that's cool, but you're going to have to very much repeat the episodes. Don't change them. You're gonna have to do it exactly how it was done in the cartoon, and it's gonna lose its luster because Nathan and I have talked about this before. When we ask authors questions in interviews, we're like, "Do you want to do live action or animated?" Most people lean animated because there's just so much more you can do with that media than you can do in live action.
There's some things that just look ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard to pull them off, right?
Correct. So again, Revan is probably one of my new favorites to go down that line. Either when he
Revan's great.
first goes and turns, or after the turning and going back. Either of those storylines would be fantastic content, and I think it's content most people don't know. So to go away from the block in time that we're at now and go anywhere in the past that built up to those things that are happening now, because a lot of people don't even know like the planet Sith was an entire race. It's not just what they're called as the Dark Jedi. So
Yeah,
like to explain that too, and I think people would be confused when you say that too, if they're not experienced with that content.
and I'd like to see more about the Planet Eater Darth Nihilus and everything dating back to the old Sith Dark Council, like Darth Nihilus and Darth Scourge, and everything that they had when Revan had come back with um oh, who the heck was he with? It was Darth Revan and Malak.
Yep.
And Revan had to end up killing Malak because the Council basically wiped his memory, the Jedi Council, and then he went back and killed Malak. And there's a lot of stuff going on with the Great Old Mandalorian War and Mandalore and all of that stuff that could be really, really cool to see too. So I'm Team Old Republic,
Yep. Most
and
definitely.
that's what I would prefer.
Old Republic would be fat. I would love an Old Republic series if it was done right.
Correct.
I would also like to see something that and it could be one that we know. It could be some random one that we don't. But I would love to watch a movie just about the bounty hunters trying to survive the seedy underworld in Star Wars, like Coruscant, Tatooine. I would love to watch a bounty hunter trying to scrape by and make it without getting, well,
Yeah.
bountied.
Yeah.
That,
Or
that
Interact
would be
with
pretty
the-
cool.
a
or
new
the
s-
Empire and the criminal organizations, just trying to carve out a living and maybe raise a family. That could be an interesting stressor. A little way to raise the stakes. Like, when are you gonna get out of it? Just one more job. It'll set us up for life.
Absolutely.
I think
Well-
it'd be fun to watch that.
Mhm.
I would like to watch that.
I'd buy that for $1. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been yet another episode with your bearded nerdy hosts. Caleb has a little bit of work to do before he can catch
He's
up.
getting there.
It's a goat scruff.
As anybody who's been watching from the beginning knows that I grow the most glorious beards out of everyone. That is just a natural beauty that it takes time to put such perfection to use. Kidding. But anyways, thank you all for coming back and joining us for another episode. We'll have more of these types. And again, put in the comments anything that you would like to see for an episode of content. As always, for old time's sake. Do 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 funky fantasy. Do 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 on con. Do 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 Stratoceros. But up. It's the war of nerds. See y'all next time.
See you guys.